to our guest speaker today. A man of God. I love this dude. I'm not going to choke up because he has the anointing of crying. He has the anointing of crying and speaking.
It's true.
He's one
It's
of the
true.
manliest men that you'll ever meet, and he cries all the time when he speaks. But I have seen this guy's life get so transformed over the course of the last, I'd say, 7 years. I've got to know Jason. Jason is a former Marine. He had a rough childhood, and so we can connect on that level. And how many guys father issues? We had father issues that we had to get over with and we had to get healed from. But this man of God runs his own business. He's the men's director at the Rock Church, my former church where I came from. And so if you guys could give a warm, radiant welcome to Jason Bliss. This morning, amen?
Thank you, Tim. Oh, it's leaking all over me. All right, good. All right. Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing. I'll try to stand behind this thing so it doesn't look like I pissed my pants the whole time. Yeah, and I guess I'll just maybe apologize up front. I could be a little salty sometimes. I hope that doesn't completely offend all of you. Some of you, I always expect it. If I don't offend at least 10 to 20% of the people, I'm probably not doing it right. So, if I see you get up and leave, I guess I know that was the one. So just a brief thing. Billy obviously knows me. He knows my story. We've been in the trenches together for a while. He actually was the guy that kind of oversaw me in this men's ministry that I've been doing for the last 4 years. And I'll just say this because I realized this morning that you guys have actually had a couple of the pastors from the Rock up here speaking to you guys. And I'll just tell you right ahead of time, I am not one of them. I am no theologian. I have not been to seminary. I have no formal training. But the training that I have, I think, is much like most of you men, and that's in the trenches, trying to figure out this thing called being a follower of Christ. And that's where my real passion comes into this. Just a little backstory before I get going. At the Rock, we didn't always have a strong men's ministry, and I'm honestly I'm so thankful that you guys, through everything that you've been through in the last couple of years, that you guys are hitting the ground running. And to have this many guys showing up already, I think is a testament that there is a spirit in this church and in this place that cannot be matched by the enemy. I'll just say that out loud. I'm gonna speak that over you guys right now, that cannot be matched by the enemy. We have the ultimate on our side. And for me, where this all started was about 9 years ago, and we didn't have a really strong men's ministry. It was barely hanging on, and we didn't have any men's groups. And for me, I'm the kind of guy. I'm very relational. I gotta have some guys to spar with on a regular basis, and that just didn't exist. And so, for me, having a construction company, the only real time that I had available was Friday morning at 6 a.m. And that group did not exist. And so I decided, well, I'm going to get a group going Friday at 6 a.m. because it works for me. And my guess is there's probably a couple guys out there that it works for. And if it works for them, great, they'll show up. And the first week, one other guy showed up. And then a couple weeks later, a couple more guys showed up. And fast forward, coming up on almost 9 years now, we've got anywhere between 20 and 30 guys showing up on a Friday morning at 6 a.m. Because they've heard some stories that marriages have been healed, families have been restored, jobs have been lost and then found. And that's the stuff that gets me fired up. That's the reason that I keep moving forward with this thing called men's, whatever you want to call it, men's ministry, men's community groups. I don't care what you want to call it. I just know that I've seen it change lives. It's changed my life. That song, Graves to Gardens, I mean, my gosh, that is like a story of my life. You know, I've been through many trials, and those trials, and this is a whole nother talk, maybe sometime I could share it with you, but my trials, when I take the I and flip it and put him before me, those trials have become trails that I can take other men down, and that you can take your trials and you can create trails that you get to take other men down. And that's the whole premise of this and what we do together. Once a month, man, it's not enough. I'm going to challenge you throughout this. Make it more often. Do what you got to do to make this thing weekly, because we don't make a lot of progress just once a month. We got to be doing this stuff regularly. We got to be doing this with a couple of guys, 2 to 3, 3 to 6, whatever you got. Do it consistently. Don't, and I'll just say this, you know, as an encourager, don't do it here at the church. People have real hang-ups when they get into this place sometimes, and they may not want to share everything that they could share. Because there should be a reverence for God's house, right? But sometimes that reverence gets in the way of us ultimately sharing our hearts and what we're actually going through. So I just would encourage you, if you can, do it somewhere outside the church, and it's nothing against the church. Please don't hear me wrong. But do it in a place where you can fully reveal, that you can fully share your heart, that men can actually go deeper and not worry. You know, like, you know, we hear those stupid stories, guys, you know, say, oh, and I can't go to church. The roof would fall in if I came in. You know, there's so much. Yeah, good luck. Get behind me. I got a bit more. So what I'm going to talk about is these ideas that have come to me in the past couple years. It was by way of a book, but it really reinforced what I was seeing, not only in my life, but in the men's lives around me, the men of our men's ministry and our breakfast, the men's group that I lead, some of the other groups that are going. But there is this challenge sometimes of, how do I be a godly man? And how do I be a godly husband? How do I become a godly father? And how do I also live in a world that's not so godly, right? And I think, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes a little bit too easy to give into wanting to fit in to the world, that we forget about what sets us apart, right? And there's 5 things, and I'm going to try to get through in the time that I've got, and it's the reason I've got my timer going, which I can't see because my phone keeps blanking out. So if I go too long, somebody just throw something at me and I'll get off. It's okay, you know. But so there's 5 marks of a godly man, and I'll tell them out from the outright, praying that I get through them all. And if I don't, maybe I'll come back. If not, you guys talk about it. But there's 5 marks of a godly man, and it's based on 1 Corinthians 16, 13 to 14. And it's really interesting because when I took over as men's ministry director 4.5 years ago at our church, before that, we had decided on that was going to kind of be our marquee verse. And if you know 1 Corinthians 16, 13, most guys do. It's a very strong set of verses. It is a manly verse set, and it says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, and let all that you do be done in love. That was the part that I always missed, was that verse 14 part. Let all that you do be done in love, because as men, we don't like to talk about love a whole lot. But I will say this, and this gets mostly into kind of the tail end of this. I'll just say this because there's nothing worse than a guy that calls himself a follower of Christ not doing things in love. And being a guy that didn't always do that, I can certainly tell you that I was definitely not the best testament for what a follower of Christ looked like. So I'll just say this from the outset. If whatever it is that you're doing, be it being in the Word each morning, being in the prayer room, being at church on Sundays, doing this kind of breakfast, if you call yourself a follower of Christ, but what you are doing doesn't come out as love towards everyone, please don't call yourself a follower of Christ. Please don't call yourself a Christian. Please don't be the representative for Radiant Church out in the community if what you are doing is not showing love. Right? We all know the guy that's got, the the Jesus sticker, or he greater than I, or, back when I was growing up, it was a little Jesus fish on their bumper, and you're cutting off everybody in town, right? That's not a very good testament to being a follower of Christ. So anyway, let all that you do be done in love. And I'll start off with the first mark, and it's that the be watchful part. The be watchful part is men have a vision. And that's the difference between, there's 5 things, as I'm going to mention, that separate boys from men. And the first one is that men have vision. And Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people will perish. And that's so true in our walk with Christ, that if we don't have a vision, if we aren't looking forward, if we aren't setting something before us that we're working towards with him, we will perish. And the thing that I found that separates us the most as godly men is this word that, if you've been around politics or listened to politics over the last couple years or 8 years or whatever, there's a word called gravitas that was really used a whole lot. And gravitas, it became this thing. And I remember hearing it, but I never really thought about it. Well, gravitas is the root word for gravity. And gravity is something that draws us in. And the difference between boys and men is that men have gravitas. Men have something that brings weight into the room with them. As a boy, I didn't have any gravitas. I had no life experience. I had no real Holy Spirit encounter as a kid. So I didn't bring a lot of gravitas to conversations. But as a man of God who knows his spiritual identity, my gravitas is what separates me from a lot of the other guys that are still trying to figure this out. And I'm not some great thing. Please hear me. And I should have started with a prayer, because this is where I start to get wrong. So bear with me for a second while I pray. And if you would, just bow your heads with me. Father, right now, I just lift you. I lift let your words come through my mouth, Father, that your words would rise and mine would fall to the floor where they deserve, Father. Holy Spirit, I invite you into this talk and this conversation right now. Lead my words so that nothing would come around to glorifying me, that would only glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen. Yeah, all right, now we should probably start over again. But as I was saying about gravitas, and the reality is, most of our gravitas comes from these primal senses that most of us were raised with, right? And if you grew up maybe like I did, a little like I did, or exactly like I did, youngest of 3 kids, raised by a single mom. My dad wasn't even around when I was born. I wouldn't meet him till 5 years later. This little thing in my brain called the limbic system took in all of this stuff. And it really is what hardwired me for most of my life. And so my primal sense of abandonment, divorce, pain, poverty, all of these things became my primal sense that I lived out of and I act out on, and I become a husband into, I become a business owner into. And if I'm not careful, those primal senses will be what leads me through most of my life. But that's a boy way of dealing with things. The man's way of dealing with things is getting into the Word, finding out what his vision for my life is, not what mine is, because I had some pretty cool ideas what I wanted to do. But it wasn't until I fully submitted my life to God and fully submitted to his vision for my life that I ultimately found the most joy. So that's the first one, is men having vision. And I'll say this, that if what you feel like you're living out, and maybe you've said, here's what my vision, this isn't a vision statement, okay? We've all, in business, we know what vision statements are. We know what mission statements are. But the thing that I've found, that there's 2 things that mark a true vision, is time and difficulty. Let me repeat that. Time and difficulty. If it's not something that takes time to develop, likely it's probably not a vision. And if there's no difficulty that it takes to get there, likely it might just be a pipe dream. Okay? So time and difficulty. And I'll say this, that being a man also doesn't have a whole lot to do with your age. What you're doing right now sets you apart from any other man your same age. You're here on a Saturday morning. You're here when you could be doing something with your kids, your family, maybe your business. You could be doing something maybe a little bit more joyful than getting up in the morning and coming over here. But there's 15-year-old men and there's 45-year-old boys. Right? There's things that set you apart. And so I'll just say this. You, for your age, are set apart. You're doing something different, and I commend you for that. Not just because I get to spend some time with you, but because you're chasing after God. So first one is men have a vision. Second one is men will take a minority position. Matthew 7:13-14 says, enter by the narrow gate. The way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Just a little plug for one of the greatest Marine Corps movies, A Few Good Men. Those who find it are few. We have to enter through a narrow gate. We have to take a minority position, men. Boys fit in, but men will stand out. Let me say that again. Boys will fit in, but men will stand out. I can remember in junior high, I think I was 6th grade going into 7th grade. I want to say it was that summer between 6th and 7th grade, but all of a sudden, cute little Jason started becoming kind of awkward and zitty looking junior high Jason. And at that time, there was this product out on the market that was supposed to help with this a lot. It was called Clearasil. And it was a flesh tone acne cream that if you just put this little flesh tone acne cream on your zits, somehow miraculously the world wouldn't know that you were a zit-faced kid like Jason, right? But what I looked like was an orange spotted, like a cheetah walking around school. And not only did I not fit in, I stood out like a sore thumb, man. Yeah, flesh tone zit cream is not one of those things that I think will go down in history as, a great invention. But it's true, but boys just want to fit in. You know what I mean? They just want to go with the flow. They don't want to stand out. They want to go with what's easy. But men are going to stand out. And I'll say this about that boys also are fractions, but men are whole. And the word integrity, we've all heard the word integrity, right? Well, that comes from the root word of integer. And integer means whole. And so if we're going to be a man of integrity, we are going to be men who are whole. We are not going to be men who take the easy path. We're not going to be fractions of men. We are going to stand against the tide. And I'll say this, I've read a ton of leadership books. I write a lot on leadership. And, the ultimate goal in any tactical situation is to gain the high ground, right? In every situation, in war, in battle, and things like this, we always want to gain the high ground because that's the most tactical point of advantage. You can see your enemy coming. You can fend off very easily. But I'll say this, that the high ground will never be the easy place. The high ground is always exposed to the elements. You're always going to be beaten down on by sun. You're going to have wind coming. If you ever stood on a hilltop, the wind is just rushing around you. The soil is unsteady. As a builder, when people tell me they want to build up on the top of a hill, I said, okay, let's talk about vision, time, and difficulty. Because it's never easy to build on a hilltop. You will always be dealing with the elements. You will always be dealing with things that are going to come against you. And so I'll just say this, there's a high ground truth that it's harder, it's more exposed, and it's often lonelier. But it's where your vision is best realized, and most of your battles will be won. Billy was talking about his prayer retreat that he's been on. I asked him this morning, what was revealed to you? Sometimes we have to get away. We have to get to that high ground in order to see clearly what's going on around us. But we can't stay on that high ground necessarily for any length of time because without reinforcements, right? So I'll just say this. We always want to gain that high ground, but the high ground is always going to be the most difficult to keep. So we have to take that minority position in order to sustain that. So I'll ask you, in this mark, are you choosing comfort or the high ground of godly obedience? Third mark, men are team players. Every guy knows this verse, Proverbs 27:17. I could probably just let you guys say it. So one man sharpens another. But I'll say this, as men, we don't often want to be team players. As boys, we all wanted to be the MVP. We all wanted to be picked first for the team, all these other things. But a man wants the team to win. Boys are lonely and want all of the glory to come to them. But men will be looking out for the team. And there's a great analogy for this. And most of us have heard it our whole lives, that, to be the lone wolf, right? As men, I'm a lone wolf, man. I don't go along with what other guys are doing. I'm out here doing this on my own. Well, you want to know a couple truths about lone wolves? They're skinny because they're starving. Wolves are pack animals. And what it takes to take down the big game is a pack. So that lone wolf is typically a lot skinnier. They're starving most of the time. They're lonely. They're outcasts. So what happens? They die sooner. Sorry, guys, you want to be the lone wolf, you're going to die a bit sooner. Because we need this. We need this pack right here. I needed to figure out what the hell is going on in my marriage, because I can't see past my blinders. I need you guys to come alongside me. Hey, you know what? I know that what you say is this, but that's not what I'm seeing. I've got my pack of guys around me. Thank God I have a strong council of men that are not only my men's council for my ministry, but these guys are my pack, man. These guys are these guys are my family. And they can see all of my blind spot. They can see every way that, Jason gets up here, every once in a while and talks about all these good things, but they have no problem saying, Jason, you speak a good game. But let me tell you what I'm seeing. And let me tell you what Katie has been hearing from Michelle when they've been having their one-on-one talks. It doesn't paint the same picture that you're getting up here and talking about. We need that team, guys. And here's the simplest way. I'll just say this. I'm going to give you hopefully a couple practical things. But what I would say first, and this is one of the things that I think I started with, was, and this goes back to my time in the Marine Corps. Some of the time that I was in the Marine Corps, I was part of the honor guard and the burial team. And I had the honor and the opportunity to be one of the 6 pallbearers when a guy was given his kind of last honor. And I did over 100 of those burial services, and it absolutely changed my life. But what happened in us as a team became something really strong. And so I'll say this, and this will be my challenge for you. Do you know who your 6 pallbearers are going to be? Not to be dark, not to be, talking on a Saturday morning about death, but here's my challenge to you. If you're married, do your wife a favor and line this out. Make sure that those guys know who they are. And that when the time comes and your wife is trying to figure everything else out that she shouldn't be worrying about, because hopefully she's got some women of God coming alongside her and supporting her and comforting her. But the last thing she should have to worry about is who's going to be carrying you out. So name those 6 guys, let them know who they are, and make sure that your wife knows exactly who those guys are. So when that time comes, if that time comes, hopefully not sooner than later, but that's one blessing that you can do for your wife. A small thing, but it will absolutely bless her. It'll be one less thing that she'll have to worry about. Because here's the thing, we know how relational women are, right? She's going to be sitting there thinking, oh gosh, who am I going to pick? Which guys am I going to offend? Katie's one of my best friends here, so I guess it's got to be Mike, and all these other things. Don't let that get in the way. Don't let that become a weird thing. Name your 6 pallbearers, and maybe those 6 pallbearers might become your circle. The guys that get to see all your blind spots. The guys that you live life with. Easy enough? Yeah. Going back to my childhood, some of these things are not easy for me to do because we are naturally afraid of commitment. If you've experienced abandonment or divorce, in my case, my mom divorced twice. If you've experienced any of that, it's not something that we're going to do naturally in life. We've seen heartache. We've seen abandonment. We've seen all these things. Why would I ever want to get close to anybody? I mean, how do I even know how to stay in my marriage? And that's a whole nother topic, man. But we all need deep friendships. And most of these friendships are going to be based, first, pretty simply. Maybe it's just around some hobbies, you know? Most of my close friends, we get together most Friday afternoons down at the local cigar shop. We have a cigar. We share what's going on that week. If it's in my backyard, we're probably going to break out a couple bottles of bourbon. But this is where the stuff gets out on the table. This is where a guy who's been hanging around for a couple years finally can open up that for 6 months he was cheating on his wife and he finally had to come clean. This was not anything that I was expecting. But when you get together around some hobbies, it becomes really easy to kind of get some of those other things out. So maybe just start simple. And it doesn't have to be bourbon. It doesn't have to be cigars, you know. I grew up in church. You never could have said that, man. I would have been pulled off the stage already. The fourth mark, I don't want to be respectful of your guys' time since I can't see my phone. Men work. Men work. We were created to create and cultivate. Going back as early as Adam had two simple tasks: create and cultivate. This is what we were designed for, man. This is where we find our joy. This is where we find our passion. Not always joy, but again, joy is something that you choose, right? I'm not talking about happiness. Happiness can be fleeting. But true joy, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, when you're doing something that you love. Nick, I talked to you this morning. I know for 9 years you've been doing what you love, man, and I can see it beaming all over your face. Sometimes probably talking a little bit more than you should because I can't even get a word in edgewise with Nick, you know? Anybody that knows Nick knows that, right? He starts talking, he's passionate, you know, get a word in edgewise, but I know he's doing what he loves. And that brings me joy. I get to see that, right? Boys will chase the rewards, but men will shoulder responsibility. I've had my business now for 17 years, and it wasn't always a lot of reward, I can tell you that. But the responsibility of it, the knowing that what I was doing was given to me by God. It wasn't anything to do with my ability. Again, poor kid growing up, didn't go to college, went right out of school to the Marine Corps. I didn't have a lot of experience. Nobody in my family was ever entrepreneurial. But what I found was a passion for business. I found a passion for operations. And what God did is he took my passion and my willingness to submit to him in it, that I wasn't some great business owner, that I wasn't some great strategist, but I let him lead me in that business. And it has thrived. It has blossomed. It has done more than I could ever imagine. And I'll say this about work. The goal for us in work should not be to retire as quick as we possibly can. If that's your goal, like honestly, you're probably in the wrong business. And I'm not saying that we need to work the rest of our lives in order to be, you know, something special. But the reality is, my goal, like honestly, full transparency with you guys, my goal is to be able to sell my business within the next 5 years so that I can go into the business that God actually designed me for, which is this kind of ministry. That I can speak to men, that I can speak to marriages, because I, 7 years ago, being Jason and the ego that came with Jason and the abandonment issues and all of this stuff, succumbed to sin, and I all but destroyed my marriage in the process. Jason was leading his marriage down a path that he had only seen done before. He didn't know what it looked like. So it was very easy for me to go down this path. But my goal now, because we went through the fire together, because we took time for that which requires time, the busiest of our business, we had literally just come off of doing 6 shows nationally, because Jason's ego saw himself as something special. Our business was booming, and in the middle of it, I'm all but destroying our marriage. And thank God, our pastor, who you may get to meet soon, Rick, saw something in me, saw that, yeah, Jason's kind of an egotistical jerk, but man, his marriage is worth something saving. And this guy's a part of our church. He's a part of our community. He's a part of our family. So we're going to send him to Colorado for 2 weeks. And we're just going to spend 2 weeks not working on anything other than his marriage. And we did that. I took myself out of my business for 2 weeks, the worst 2 weeks of my life. But if I hadn't done it, I can guarantee you I wouldn't be married right now, because we took time for that which requires time. We have to do that, men. Sometimes we have to be willing to say, you know what? All this saying, these things seem important, but the most important thing is that I love my wife like Christ loves me. And that's what I had to do. So I'll just say that men work. And finally, my last point is that men love. I mentioned it. It's not the, men have vision, men take minority position. It's men love. And what sometimes we lose in maybe this translation of love, and it comes out, 1 Corinthians 16:14, let all that you do be done in love. But I see it as this word called protect. If I love you, I'm going to protect you. If I love our friendship, I'm going to protect this. If I love my wife like Christ loves me, I'm going to protect her. I'm going to protect this thing. And I was made aware that, obviously marriage is something really difficult, because what other time have you gotten up in front of a couple hundred people and had them stand witness for you vowing to do something? There's obviously some difficulty to marriage. And that's why I don't take lightly also when people are talking to me about, they're going to get married and, oh yeah, we're going to have, a party of 500 people. Really? Are those 500 people really all that important in your life? Because yeah, I understand wanting to have a party. But getting up in front of people that will hold you accountable, that are going to come alongside you, that are going to help you through life, those are the people that you want around you. And so if we're going to love, we're going to protect. Boys want to be served, but men will serve. Do you agree with that? Boys want to be served, but men will serve. And I'll say this as another form of protection. Financial wisdom, that's a form of protection, man. One of the greatest things that Michelle and I got to do a couple years ago was not get on the radio. We didn't do the big thing, but we got to do our debt-free scream to each other, because it was that important for us to get out of debt. It was that important for us to have financial freedom. We were doing well in our business, but as long as we were in debt, we felt like prisoners. And so I'll just say this, that the sooner that you can gain financial freedom, the more protection your wife, your family will have. And I'll say this too, and I'm going to challenge you, because another thing that we get a little bit hung up on, and it amazed me a couple of years ago when I was talking to a good friend of mine who was also on my council, but he shared with me that he had a really hard time with tithing. He didn't agree with the leadership of the church, and so he just wasn't sure if this was the best, because he made a lot of money. And was this money really being used the best way it possibly can? And that really hit me hard. It's like, man, this is a guy who I would say is my peer spiritually, and yet this is a guy who's having this challenge. I'll say this on behalf of not just this church, but most churches. Tithing will protect our churches from failure. It will. You have something to offer. You may not be able to have something to offer each week from a working in the church or volunteering or whatever, but if you are tithing, you are helping the church weather the storms. You are protecting it because I'll tell you this, having been behind the scenes of the church for probably longer than maybe sometimes I'd like to say, I also know the small percentage of the church that tithes. And this certainly was never, anything that I would ever thought I'd be comfortable talking about, but I'll challenge you with this. Start with something, even if it's not 10%, which is what we're called to, but start with something, because your tithing will protect the church from failure. I made it. Honestly, I'm pretty surprised, because I started this back in January, and we're going to be finishing next month at our breakfast. I went way too long on the first one. Second one, I thought maybe I'd make up some time, but man, I did it in less than 45 minutes. So my final charge to you guys is, as it says in 1 Corinthians 16:13 and 14, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, Let all that you do be done in love. So the first one is men have a vision. The second one is that men will take a minority position. The third one is men will be team players. The fourth is that men will work. And the fifth is that men will love. And I'll remind you, if it's not coming out of you as love, please don't tie it back to that you go to the Radiant Church, okay? Please. We have enough of those people running around claiming to be something, flipping the bird, cutting people off, freaking parking lot rage. This coming from a guy who has parking lot rage every once in a while. So I'll leave you with that. Maybe some of the next steps for you might be choose just one of those marks to work on in the next couple weeks. But the most important one, find a brother to do that with. Find a brother to walk that out with. Find those 6 guys. And again, not to be weird, guys. I know it can come across a little bit morbid talking about death on a Saturday morning. I'll tell you what was even worse was a couple months ago when I was back east at my mother-in-law's celebration of life, and somehow, some way, I fit in David killing Goliath and David sharing his testimony and his stories to encourage others to kill more giants. That was a little bit weird to speak about at somebody's funeral, but it worked. Somehow, some way, people came up and they're like, I never thought of it that way. Sometimes we have to share our testimony to encourage others to do something that had never been done before. Nobody had ever killed a giant before David. And how many more fell after that? 3 or 4, because David had the will to tell others what had been done and how he had done it. So find some guys to do that with. I encourage you guys, walk this out in the next couple weeks. Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Awesome. How many of you guys enjoyed that word? Yeah. Good. So good. Hey, before we go, we're going to play a little bit of music. I want you to go ahead and I want you to marinate a little bit within your table talk and just spend the next 10 minutes connecting which one main point out of those 5 that he gave maybe resonated with you the most, and have this time to be a time to just kind of connect. Maybe there's some prayer requests, feel free for that, but at least for the next 10 minutes, hang out and connect with your group. Sound good?
Yeah.